Good evening, everybody. Thank you for joining me, and we're starting the microclass in just a moment. Good evening, everybody. Thank you for joining me, and we're starting the microclass in just a moment. So, good evening, everybody, and thank you for joining me. Tonight, we're going to do a short class on how to manage your stress the easy way. So, in this video, we're going to be looking at what you can do to take control over your stress levels. One of the problems with the stress response is it's so automatic. A lot of the time, we feel like it's in charge of us, or it's in control of us, rather than us being in control of our stress. So tonight is going to be all about giving you simple tools to give you more, to help you be more equipped to tackle your stress in a relatively easy way, perhaps in an easy way than you might imagine. So let's get moving. First of all, I'd like to tell you a little bit more about me. My name is Shane Pearson, and I am a module leader for the Institute of Health Sciences. I'm also a health and wellness coach and a stress management coach. And I'm a lecturer and trainer for IHS, teaching both stress management, NLP, health and wellness coaching, and some other areas as well. A little bit about the Institute of Health Sciences for those of you who aren't familiar. So IHS is an industry and academically recognized institute offering training in the areas of nutrition and coaching. We offer part-time and online study options for adult learners, and we have students from all over the globe now. All our courses are based on an integrative and personalized approach to healthcare, and we ensure that all students, whether in class or online, have a supported, dynamic, and interactive learning experience. And the IHS team has a wealth of education in science, healthcare, practitioners, coaching and business expertise, and tons of experience. So moving on with our microclass, managing stress. So like I said before in the introduction, the stress response, the fight or flight response that we all have is largely an automatic function. It can happen all by itself, whether we consciously choose to trigger it or not. So that can seem like a problem. However, there are easy ways to take back conscious control over this otherwise automatic response. And a caveat here is if you don't take conscious control over your stress levels, it can be self-perpetuating, meaning stress breeds stress. We all know what it's like when we're getting a little bit stressed, a little bit tetchy. It doesn't take much sometimes to send us into over the edge, you could say, or into an even more stressed state. So all the more reason to find out how we can do, what we can do about it, and how we can take control over the stress. So let's move on to what I want to talk about tonight. So how to take control of stress? Well, luckily, like I said, there are a number of ways to more consciously control stress. To simplify things, I've created what I call the stress management triangle. And the stress management triangle are really three different areas that you can consider and change at any time to take better control over your stress levels. So what is this stress management triangle? Well, really, it's just a very simple triangle, a visual model to help you remember these main components. So anytime, these are the three things that we can consider, become aware of, and then, if necessary, change to take better control over our stress. So the three components are our focus, language, and breathing. So what we are focusing on anytime, the language we are using at any time, and how we are breathing. So let's look at that now in more detail. Starting with focus. So anytime you feel your stress levels rising, number one, we have to become aware of that. And as one of the things I say when we talk about stress management is, kill the monster when it's a baby. When I talk about stress, it's much easier to tackle stress when we're at those moderate levels of stress rather than extreme levels of stress. These principles will apply at any stage, but it's much easier to kind of reassure and calm the system down before we get too tetchy, before we get too stressed. So what can we do? Focus. So when we are in those in that stress state, we can become aware of what we are focusing on. So basically what I mean by that is, where are your thoughts? What are you thinking about? And the golden rule here is to focus on what you want and not on what you don't want. So instead of thinking about all the things that could go wrong, we can think about all the times that everything worked out for you really well in the end. Instead of focusing on the fear of failing, which is often something that we tend to do, we focus on how good you will feel on the successful completion of whatever you're working on. Another thing to maybe consider is to focus on the desired outcome. So a lot of the time, because of when fear comes in, we can start to focus on what we don't want and focus on the potential disasters, the potential downfalls that may be ahead. These are things that may or may not happen. To take better control over our brain and our thoughts, we can, if we find ourselves going to those places that are out of fear, try and bring yourself back and focus on the desired outcome. So what I mean by that is, put yourself at the successful completion of whatever task or situation you're working on. So perhaps you have a fear of failing the upcoming driving test. Those of you who had a driving test know how nervous we can be beforehand. So we can, instead of focusing on perhaps getting something wrong in the test, focus on the successful completion. So you perhaps coming out of the car at the end, or being handed your certificate, or getting the thumbs up that you're now a qualified driver. Keep that in your mind. A very powerful way to use your magnificent mind. Another tip here is focus on calming thoughts. So when the mind gets a bit, strays off into territories that's creating more of a stress response, what we can do is we can imagine that we're somewhere very calming. So a typical example there is the beach scene, what I call the beach scene. So we can, no matter where we are, we can imagine ourselves and we can create internal imagery of the beach, a beautiful beach with white sand and just the beautiful temperature, with the sound of the waves just rolling in and crashing out. And the waves and the sound of the waves are only helping you feel more and more calm. There's a sun beating down and it's warm on your skin, and there's a gentle breeze floating past. And we can focus on that, and guess what? Our body starts to feel more calm, more reassured. So the tips there is focus on what you want, not on what you don't want, and create a place where you go to often, a place what I call a sanctuary, where your body feels nice and relaxed. And the next part of the triangle is what I call language. So another thing to become aware of, if you're in that stress response or in that stress state, and perhaps a moderate level of stress, is to ask yourself, what are you saying? Examine the language you're using to yourself and to others. So sometimes, some of us have, at times been very good at using language, beating ourselves up, or punishing ourselves, or saying bad things to ourselves, really, inside our own minds. Things that we wouldn't say to anyone else sometimes. So we can examine that language and go, oh, is this perpetuating the stress response? Or is it calming and reassuring myself that actually things are calm and everything's going to be okay? So you may want to change some language like "don't panic" into "stay calm." Say it the way you want it. Another example might be, "I don't want to fail." Instead of saying like that, you can say things like, "I know I am doing my best." and everything will work out just fine. It always does in the end. Language, like we can tend to use language like, I'm so stressed out, and that stress out will perpetuate the stress response. Instead, use language like, I am in control of my stress. I am now taking action to calm down and to reassure myself that everything will be fine. A mantra, some little repeating pattern of the language, such as every day, in every way, I'm feeling better and better. Every day, in every way, I'm getting better and better. Every day, in every way, I'm getting better and better. Just a little mantra can override some of those habitual language patterns that we use inside our own minds. Also, become more consciously aware of what you're saying to others. Is it appropriate? Would it be effective at lowering stress, or would it be perpetuating stress, or perhaps creating more stress? So focus on your language and be aware of your focus, what you're thinking about. Number 3, the last one, breathing. So here's the thing with the stress response. The stress response is triggering the fight or flight response. Like I said, it's largely happening at an automatic level. It's an autonomic system. So when that kicks in, it does certain things to our body. Adrenaline flows, cortisol, stress hormones come in, and we start to breathe faster because the body's getting ready to run for its life or to fight for its life. And if we're not careful, our breath will become fast and shallow and often from up high in the chest, a bit like this. And we'll notice this because we're speaking faster. So become aware of your breath. Where are you breathing from? How fast or how slow are you breathing? This is perhaps the most immediate and powerful ways to take control over your stress response, because it is impossible for you to remain in a stress state if you can change your breathing, because a slow and deep breath from the belly is not an example of the stress pattern. It's not in any way similar to the breathing pattern of the stress response. So we can override and reassure our body and train it. No, this is not an appropriate stress response. We're taking back control here, becoming aware of our breath. We're breathing slow and deep. A nice tip here is to take your hand, and if you're breathing from the chest, and just move it down here. If you want to breathe with me now, breathe right down into the belly. And if you're doing this properly, it will be what's called a deep diaphragmatic breath, or diaphragmatic breathing. And your belly should rise and fall. Rise and fall. And if you want to do this with me for another two breaths, you might get an experience yourself. I'm going to do one more now just to really drive home the meaning of this. And I'm also doing it because it's incredibly good for us. This deep diaphragmatic breathing not only gets us out of the stress response, but it also is really good for oxygenating the body, and even for massaging the lymphatic system. So massaging the internal organs and increasing the movement of the lymphatic system. So it's an all-around really good tool. So really emphasize, you take control of your breathing. So a quick recap now. What are the 3 things we've covered so far? Focus. Focus on what you want rather than what you don't want. Focus on the desired outcome rather than the fear of getting something wrong. Focus on a beach scene or a garden scene, or put your mind somewhere where it tells your body that, this is a nice environment, a nice calm environment. By changing your focus, you're changing where your thoughts are going, and energy flows where attention goes. The next component to consider is language. So what are you saying to yourself? What are you saying to others? You may need to challenge that language, and you may need to change it. Change your language so that it reflects where you want to be, how you want to be, and more reflects your desired outcome and where you want to go. So rather than using language to say, perhaps describe the stress response, I'm so stressed. I'm now taking control of my breath and my focus to calm myself down and reassure myself that the stress response is not appropriate here. Finally, breathing. Find out where you're breathing. Are you breathing high and fast, high in the chest, shallow and fast, or are you breathing down here? Bring the breath down. And you're going to change that stress response. This works excellently when you're in a moderate level of stress, and you can bring yourself from what I call the amber zone down to the green zone. The danger is when we're in the amber zone, we can go into the red zone too quickly. So really, really powerful tool to take control of our stress response. It does take awareness first, and it does take practice. So these are new skills. What I recommend here is you start maybe with any one of these three components. Increase your awareness. But what is your automatic response? So what are you doing? Where does your mind go? Where does your language go? Where does your breathing go when you're in that stress response? And then just challenge any one of them. Change it around a bit. Get good at one of those sections, whether it's your breathing, your focus, your language. And if it's an important stress response you want to take control over, use all three. But practice, 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 because repetition is the mother of all skill. And with the repetition, you'll be rewiring your brain. And someday, you'll be replacing the old stress response in situations with a brand new response that leaves you more resourceful. So you may want to get more information on what IHS is offering on our courses and events. So the websites to look for are www.ihsireland.com and or www.ihsuk.com. So stay up to date. Follow us on Facebook for more information on all our Facebook Live microclasses. The next date for a microclass is the 25th of April, 8 p.m. Irish time, UK time. And the topic is to be confirmed. So get your requests in, because we want your feedback, and you can have an input in what we cover next. And also give us some feedback on how this was for you. We'd love to hear what you're getting from these classes. We also want to tell you about some information evenings in April. Online, you can join us on Tuesday, the 10th of April at 7 p.m. We're going to talk about our upcoming health and wellness coaching, stress management for practitioners, and personalized sports nutrition. We also have an online event on Wednesday, the 18th of April, 7 p.m. also on the nutrition and lifestyle coaching. So if you're interested in learning more, great ways to get on one of those information evenings. So do let us know, and we'll get you on board. We also have an in-person meet in Dublin on the Thursday, the 26th of April at 6:30 p.m. And this we'll get a chance to meet the IHS staff, perhaps some of the lecturers, the trainers, and learn more about all our courses. We've got lots of courses starting in April, May, and June, so enroll now. I want to thank you all for joining me, and for all of those who are watching this video. I really do hope that this stress management triangle has been of value to you. And like I say, practice, practice, practice. I would love to hear from you. Have a good evening now, and thank you for everything. Bye-bye now.